A lot of people think the exam has changed dramatically over the past little bit. Are they right? Are they wrong? Was there giant changes or something like that? Before we jump into it, why don't you introduce yourself and just give a little background about what you do at PMI?
I manage certification content. It's something like product manager dash certification content, but I manage the team that develops all the content for all PMI exams.
Oh my God. All of them. Like we're talking about
Oh.
like the PMP, all these different things. Oh my goodness. All right. So you never sleep. I can get it. Uh, so that's cool. So, I mean, what's the best, just to go into it, I want to understand kind of like how your life is like a little bit like, what's the best thing about your job? It's a big job. It's a lot of responsibility, a lot of eyes on it, but like, what do you love the most?
I really like that the people at PMI, the executive management, they really care about the quality of the exams and credentials that we develop. I've worked in
Mhm.
other organizations where they're like, yeah, we don't care, just put an exam out there. But the executive team at PMI really, really cares, and so in some ways that makes my job a little bit harder because I need to provide all this evidence, like, yeah, this is why we're doing this, and this is, and I have to explain all of that. But I love that they care about that and that they give me and my team the leeway to develop real quality credentials that actually mean something.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, what's your background a little bit and what drew you to work at PMI? Because you have a little bit different background from like just regular project managing people, right? So like,
Yep.
what's your background?
So my background is in psychometrics, and that's statistics applied to testing.
Okay.
And it's broader than that. It's not just the math of it, but it's also the validity and all the standards that go with that to make a quality credential and assessment.
Mhm.
Um, I have worked in exam development since the early 2000s. I used to work in IT certifications before then.
Okay.
What drew me to PMI is I was consulting with a lot of different companies as I was
Mhm.
doing my doctoral studies, and PMI had a great team to work with, and there was a lot of travel, and I love to travel, so that's really what drew me.
This is pre-COVID, I understand. So this is
Pre-COVID,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, what's the biggest thing that surprised you? First of all, I should be calling you doctor, I guess, right?
I'm ABD, all but dissertation. I'm writing my dissertation
Okay,
recently.
okay, all right, we'll get there. So what's one of the biggest things like as you've gone into helping create these PMI multiple certification exams? Is there anything that's like really surprised you that you've been really like positive about? Like anything out there like in that process that has surprised you?
Um, the process, I wouldn't say that it surprised me. I was very happy to see what a thorough process PMI goes through when they develop exams, and not just to the point of exam, but even once it's live,
Hmm.
and considering translations and
Okay,
all the thorough work that goes through it all the way through.
okay,
Um, I kind of knew it when I was consulting with them because they were hiring consultants like myself to make sure that they were doing it right. But it just, I'm constantly pleased that that's the case for the PMP, which is the big flagship, and that's the case for like Agile Metrics, which is like a tiny little micro credential that's being developed, but they're very thorough with the process. So.
that's cool. And it sounds like, I mean, you come from a psychometric background, like understanding the science of it, the numbers, all the statistics, all like how we're forming questions. It's wild. Like this whole like little niche of expertise for the PMP. Like there's a lot of people in the world talking about this, obviously blogs, etc. What's one of the biggest misconceptions you think that people might have about the PMP exam, maybe specifically around like the questions and stuff?
I will say recently I've been hearing a lot about scoring, scoring
Oh,
misconceptions. Um, and there seems to be this idea that the PMP is what's called a norm reference test. You know,
okay.
10% should pass or 10% should fail, or some sort of percentage of people that take it.
Mhm.
And that's not how we decide pass fail. It's
Hmm.
actually a criterion reference test. And so we've worked really hard with experts from around the world in project management to understand what's necessary to be a successful project manager. And we've broken that, like diluted, pulled that out into the exam content outline and identified every piece that's important and necessary. And so we test on that. That's the criteria. And if you show that you are proficient at what we're testing at all those criteria, then you pass the test. And it doesn't matter if 10 other people also have met that criteria, that requirement, 100 other people or 2 other people, right? Whether you get your PMP is dependent on your proficiency as a project manager, not having anything to do with the project manager on either side of you.
Oh, so it's not great. Like some people will say, well, it's graded on a curve. So if like I go in and like there's a lot of smart people right around me, like I'm gonna have to do better. Like that's wrong, correct?
Yeah, it's completely wrong. No curves at all.
And then a lot of people are like, well, you have to get a 61 across the board. Like that's not, I'm wrong as well, right?
It's not a raw score. It's not this number or this proportion. We use what's called item response theory, IRT.
Okay.
And we use, I mean, I can be very open about this. We use a 2-parameter logistic model.
Oh my God, you just exposed the whole thing. Now everybody's gonna say, like, I can't even remember what you just said. What was it again?
It's a 2PL model, 2-parameter logistic regression model, right? That's what it is. You can look it up. You can pull up the equations. I'm in my daughter's room, so otherwise I'd pull up a book and just like, oh, here's the equation. But
there's another time for that. Yes. Right.
But it's one of the best practices for professional credentials. It's used by medical boards. It's used in almost every assessment that you're going to take as a professional to be fair. Because when you're thinking you have to get X number correct or X% correct, and you're changing the exam questions to maintain, reduce exposure, some questions are going to be easier than others. Some questions are going to be harder than others. What we're trying to understand and estimate based on your answers and your answer profile is that you have the criteria that we're looking for to pass. And so that estimate of proficiency, we use this model to estimate that proficiency based on your responses to the set of questions that you get. And so that ensures a certain level of fairness that you wouldn't get if you said, hey, there's 175 questions, you need to get, I don't even want to give a number because that's going to end up in the internet.
No, we don't want to say a certain number, right? Like that's not the way they need. And I think it goes back to like, we're not trying to beat the test. Like that's the wrong way to think about it, right? You're trying to gain competency, right? Like that's what, like people always ask me, and if you're not comfortable, it's cool. They always think that there's like some person behind PMI that's like, I want to try to trick them.
Right. No, that's against our rules. I'm not sure if it's out there on our website somewhere or not, but we have an item writing guide. And one of the things is there's no tricky questions. We're not trying to trick people because so if you do look up IRT, if you look up how assessments are developed, you're going to look at something called a TIF, which is a test information function. Every question is giving us information about you. That's part of the reason that we like independent questions, because it's separate pieces of information. And we're gathering all of that until we feel confident that our estimate of your proficiency is right. So saying a certain specific number of questions, depending on those questions, it might be different. We're trying to gather all this information like you would a water sample, right? You pull water from the corner over here, you pull it over there down the street, and you're getting all these different independent samples to get an overall understanding of that water. Is it contaminated? Is it the bacteria, is it safe to drink? All those other pieces, right? With project managers, we're sampling. Every single question is a sample, and we're gathering all this information to try to build an overall picture of the people taking the test and saying, yeah, this is enough that we're confident they meet the criteria that they are going to be an excellent project manager.
This is cool. And so like, to me, as we walk through it, it feels like the test is having a conversation. I know it's not back and forth, but it's kind of like asking them little things, and maybe I'm wrong. It's asking them little things and then it's learning. And like, it's like if you were to have a conversation with me and you were like trying to have me understand the thing, you'd ask me questions, and how I answered on them would tell you something about me. And then you wouldn't be biased to the next question. You would say, well, let me ask you about something else. And how'd you do? Let me ask you about something else. That for my simple brain, is that how we should think about it?
It is. We're gathering all this information. We have, if you look at the ECO, you have your domains, you have your tasks. We're asking questions about those different pieces, and we're gathering enough information about each part of it to feel comfortable that you're going to meet the criteria. If you're past the exam, you're meeting that criteria.
The questions in the exam are, it's not like if you and I had a conversation, I would ask you something, you ask me something, and then you might modify the questions down the line based on our thing.
It's not at the moment.
It's not like that. It's not like responsive.
It's not,
like some people.
Yeah. Right. That's adaptive testing, right? Computer adaptive testing. And it's awesome. It's great. And my computer wants to open up OneDrive for some reason. Okay.
It's all right.
But we don't currently do that. That type of testing. We have a large paper-based program still in some parts of the world. And so it really wouldn't be fair to have two different types of tests, and maybe a computer test and a paper-based test, and depending on the area.
Oh, that makes total sense. And then, so there is no, like, if I took it in Japan or Southeast, I don't know, Louisiana.
Anywhere that is not embargoed.
Okay. That seems reasonable. That's cool. Now, a lot of people think the exam has changed dramatically over the past little bit. Are they right? Or are they wrong? Or like from 2001 to 2002, was there giant changes or something like that?
Well, we released our new exam content outline at the beginning of 2021. That was a major change. So that has changed, but that change was based on global practice analysis all around the world, project managers, different industries, different regions, and their hiring managers to understand what was needed today to be a successful project manager. And the exam was adjusted based on that.
Okay.
Now, the process for developing it hasn't changed. In fact, a lot of our subject matter experts that helped us write it, design and write it before, are the same ones we have now.
Okay. How, like, just to go into that. So I understand the beginning of the year, it changed. They brought in all this new understanding. And so we're being responsive to the market and what people really need. That's cool. Just as a general thing, like, how are questions written? It's obviously not that person in the back trying to do that, but like, how are they? You have a hard job. I don't know if you know this or not. Like, how are questions written and brought in and tested and stuff?
Okay. So that has not changed since before I was hired. And the way that works is we do a global practice analysis. Every 3 to 5 years, we do a thorough analysis of around the world. We talk with people in every region, every country, we bring in translators. We get to understand what it is that someone needs to know and be able to do as a project manager to be successful across industries, across regions, right? Because we want this credential to say, here I am today in Georgia. But hey, maybe tomorrow I want to go to Spain, and I can be successful there too, even though it's a completely different region. Even if I'm moving from construction to IT, right?
Yes.
I have the skill set, I have the experience that I can still be successful. Maybe I need to learn a few details about the different industry or region, but I've already shown that I can analyze, evaluate the different pieces that are necessary, regardless of whether I'm going from a predictive environment to an agile environment, right? So that's really, really important. And we don't make that up in PMI. We meet with the people that are in the industry. And then we have PMPs from around the world that we meet with, that they write the content. They look at the ECO that was developed by people like them and hiring managers and all that, and they write questions based on their real world experience. And then they review it with peers to make sure that it's not just applicable to one region or one industry, for example.
Right.
And it goes through a thorough process. So you have a writer, a peer reviewer that's also a project manager. Then it goes to someone on my team then make sure that the structure of the question is allowing us to measure what we want to measure and not something we don't want to measure, like reading proficiency, right? We try to keep, believe it or not, we try to keep the questions kind of short.
Right.
So to the purpose. And it goes through all the reviews to make sure that we're not going to measure something that we shouldn't. Like, for example, when you write a negatively worded question, what is not the right answer? First of all, we want to know that you know what to do that's right, not necessarily to avoid the wrong, right? More important that you know what to do. But
Right.
besides that, the way that people read questions, oftentimes they skip that. So if they get the question wrong, we're not getting a lot of information. We're not sure if they got it wrong because it was awkwardly worded or because they actually didn't know the answer.
Yes.
So it goes through that review. It's usually called a psychometric review. Then it goes through 5 other subject matter experts, 5 other PMPs out there in the world to say, yes, that's the right answer. The wrong answers are wrong. And it's a realistic scenario. This makes sense to ask this question. And then it goes through another psychometric review to make sure that nothing was changed. And then it goes through the editors. And then after the editors, it goes through another PMP to make sure that in changing the editing, to make sure everything was spelled correctly and no typos, we didn't somehow change the meaning of something.
Wow.
And then it gets put on a test as an unscored item. And we field test it, right? So you know there's some unscored questions and some scored. You don't know which is which, but they're there and we're making sure that we're testing correctly. So we'll look at how people perform on those questions. We'll make sure that it's not too difficult or too easy. We'll get that estimate of difficulty that's going to help us then estimate people's proficiencies in that psychometric model I mentioned. And if it's not right, if it's not performing correctly, you know, people that know most of it, that are doing well overall, they're not doing well on these individual questions, then we're not going to penalize them for them. It's measuring something we didn't intend. It's removed. It's never part of the score.
Wow.
And that's before we even get into translations, right? If you don't take it.
So you guys have this state. I'm going to go back and listen to everything, all the 73 steps you laid out, which is really good. Well, I think what people should understand from what I got, tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that first of all, they're not trying to trick you. It isn't what PMI wants, like that there's Mr. and Mrs. PMI in a ivory tower somewhere. It's brought in from the field of real life project managers, hiring managers, et cetera. There's so much sharing back and forth to confirm so that it's not isolated to one, genius individual. Mm-hmm. And then y'all test it out in real live exam situations. Yep. They're not being penalized, but to see if it falls in there, like not too easy. It's Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold. It's like in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That should make people feel better. Like,
I hope so.
And then, okay. So the one to play devil's advocate, not really, but like some people might be like all these models and like psychometrics and stuff, like make my head spin. They might be like, you said competencies. So is there a certain competencies that like we're leaning into, like that you see as from the field, from the experts out there, they're saying like to be a great project manager, we see these as high quality traits or something. Is there anything like that you think or no?
Well, we're not measuring personality traits.
Okay.
Now that we use a job task analysis, we're looking at exactly what someone is doing on the job. And we do survey weightings for people from around the world as to how critical it is to do it right, or what happens, if something terrible happens, if it's wrong, how frequent it's done on the job and how difficult it is to do. Yes. And so we're understanding that for every aspect of the job, we measure these things, and then based on that, we create a weighting. And that's what you see on the ECO. You see the weightings for the domains. That's based on these ratings of looking at these tasks, how much experience you need to be able to actually do it well, do it right. And we measure that, and that's what's on the ECO. So we're only measuring what you see and what we've listed, right? Yes. There's no other, if they were extroverted, they'd probably be better with people. No. However, you figured out how to deal with people. If you can succeed, if you can look at a situation and read it correctly and respond correctly, then you should do well, regardless of what your EQ originally was before you trained, before you gathered all this experience. I don't personally, now this is me personally, it's not a PMI thing. Yep. But personally, certain things like personality traits they tend to be these tendencies you're born with. And I care that you can do the job, regardless of whether that was your original tendency or not. Maybe it was a lot harder for you to, work on your executive functioning, but now you are an ace with those timelines, great.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that it took you 10 years to figure it out as it took somebody else 5 years. You figured it out. You can do the job. That's what I care about. And the way that PMI currently designs their exams, that's what we're looking at, is that we're testing that you can analyze the situation correctly. You can evaluate what's going to happen with certain actions, that you know the right steps to take in a certain situation. That's what we care about, not how you got there.
Oh, that's good. Now, in 2020 to 21, that switch over, it was the influence and like all the agile and hybrid came in, right? That's the time. How long does it take to fine tune that? Like, is it still going on, or like to get all these numbers and all this testing and stuff? Because you have a whole introduction of new content, if you will. Does that take years or days, months? How should?
Well, we started actually introducing a little bit of agile content back in mid 2018.
Oh, okay.
So as I mentioned, we have people out there in the real world, project managers, writing the questions based on their real world experience. So if there was a task that could be done in an agile way, a predictive way, a hybrid way, even before the ECO changed, then they could write questions that that touch that. So what really changed when the exam changed is that in our global practice analysis, we had a weighting of, well, how much of a project manager's workload is predictive versus agile versus hybrid. We looked at how people were performing their jobs using those approaches in their companies. And of course, it does vary a bit by industry, and it also varies by region. But we got a good idea of overall trends and what we could expect and would want from someone that has their PMP. And so we took that into account when we write questions. We do have a certain approach. We make sure that about half of the exam is predictive and the other half is split fairly evenly between hybrid and agile.
Okay.
I'm sure that is somewhere, but it's not as like clearly called out as the ECO. So,
it is now that you said it. So
it's public information. I just don't know
know
how obvious it is. But we looked at that. And when we build our exams, we flag each item at what type of approach it is. And we make sure that each form is balanced. So you're not going to have a test form that's all agile or all predictive. Every test form is weighted and balanced, not just by the domains, but also by the approaches. Now, what isn't tied is, it's not like the people domain is all agile. No, all of the domains will test all approaches. So it's not split by domains, it's across the whole exam. You could have a question that's like, hey, you're in a waterfall predictive group. This is where you're at. Now you have to change resources. What do you got to do? And you're expected to respond in a predictive way. But the question will tell you, this is a predictive project. This is an agile project. This is a hybrid project. Or it may be something that's agnostic. It's
at the bottom line of it is, I don't mean to interrupt, I apologize. It's like, I love it what you're talking about, because like if you're in agile or you're in waterfall, like the way in which normal practices, they might be different, like how we manage change or how we deal with resources, or if it's our product owner versus a whatever, like the mechanism might be different. Like the path of doing work might be different. Like, do you expect, I love it. Is the exam going to change in people's like, oh, the exam's going to change in 2022. Is that right or wrong or what?
It's not going to change in 2022. However, at the end of this year, we're going to do another global practice analysis. We're going to, take that water sampling around the world and make sure that our exam content outline is still meeting the current needs of the market, and it's still reflective of that. I don't anticipate a major change, but I can't promise anything. That's why we go out there, because it's not my exam. It's what's going out there in the world, what's needed, and we shift based on that.
And those things take time, right? Like you do end of 2022, we do another global assessment. We bring in, y'all are detailed. Like I get it.
Oh,
like
yes.
you get like
thorough.
And it's going to be weeks,
It'll
months.
be about 6 months. It'll be 6 months of gathering data, interviewing people, sending out surveys. And at that point, 3 or 4 months in, if we determine that, you know what, we do need to make some adjustments, we need to do some shifts, then we design the new, those changes. We let the market know, we prepare for a pilot to test out the changes, and we adjust just like we did in 2020.
So we're not looking at anything possibly till like 2023-ish.
Right. If there's going to be an impact, you will see it in 2023, but you will be informed.
Yes.
Before
it will not be a surprise. It will not be a flip of a switch. Oh, good luck. No, like everybody knows it's published. There's a tremendous amount of insights and involvement. Okay, I understand. People can not worry. Now, here's a big question that I get a lot, and I just want to see how you'd answer it. They go, so I got this big old thick book, PMBOK 6. I got this little baby, PMBOK 7. Like I got the Agile Practice Guide. Scott, just tell me which one I study. I get to burn this one, right? Or like, what do you say to that? When
Don't
they say
forget
like,
the standards plus. So here's the thing. When I've talked in interviews before, I think every FAQ currently for PMI tells you the PMP exam is now based on the PMBOK. I think by now everybody should know it. But what I want to call out is, just like I said, we go through this major global practice analysis. So does the PMBOK, right? Our group that develops the standards, they're also ISO accredited, and they go through the very thorough, rigorous analysis. So I do think it's a great study material, but there's other great ones. And what I recommend is, first of all, make sure that you really are eligible, right? There's some expectations and requirements, years of experience that you should have, study that you should do. The studying, in my mind, if you're already prepared, if you're already a good project manager, it's for areas that maybe you don't get as much practice in your particular position, right? In your industry, in your region, and you want to brush up on that because we're looking for that global project manager. And then just double checking vocabulary. We have to have some sort of shared vocabulary. We adjust that as time goes on to the words that are used most often in the field. So do the people that write our standards and the PMBOK. So the exam's not based on that. It's based on real project managers out there in the real world, reflecting that experience, testing it so that others can show their proficiency in it. But just like any other exam, you study for it, I hope. I mean, I practiced my parallel parking before I went for the driver's test. Med students, they've been doing their internships, they've done their years of schooling, they still study before they take their medical board exams. You want to refresh all the concepts that maybe you don't touch day to day. And I think that the PMBOK is an excellent source, because I know that they do a very thorough and robust process when they're putting all of that together into the standard.
And still, like, as we're going out there, you said content outline, all these things. It's not like we threw out 6 and 7. It's like there's a lot of beautiful content and understanding in 6 and 7 and all these things. So it's like a blend and all these other competencies. But at the end of the day, can you understand how a globally, I don't know, responsible, thought-provoking, like diligent person operates projects, whether they're in Taipei or, downtown Detroit or whatever, right? Like,
right. And there's a lot of resources. You could look that up too. So on our website, we do list out the resources. And when I told you how we have the subject matter experts, they're writing the content, they're validating the content. One of the other things that they do is they find 2 independent resources that validate the correct answer. And that could be the PMBOK and another book. It could be 2 separate books. It doesn't have to be the PMBOK many times it is. But it's after the question is written and validated and everyone agrees that it's right, then they find a published source that also says that. And so just to be helpful, not at all necessary, we gather for our exam bank, we look at the top 10 or 12 resources most frequently used to validate content. And we put out that list on the website. So that's on there.
All right, I'll find it. I'll link to it. That's cool.
Yeah, but like you said, the most important is the exam content outline. That's going to tell you what we're testing. If there's something on there you're unsure about, then there's a lot of great resources like the PMBOK that will help you brush up on those pieces. But it's the exam content outline. That's what we're testing. And we're testing it by having people write based on their experience.
I understand. I got a weird question. Not weird. In your opinion, why is the PMP worth getting? I know I didn't, is that an okay question to ask?
That's fine.
Okay.
In
Why
my
is it worth
opinion,
Yes, ma'am. In your opinion,
not LinkedIn, not Forbes, not top 10 credentials in IT
No.
for employment improvement or anything. In my opinion, the PMP is a great credential to get, assuming you're a project manager. If you want to, it's really going to show that you can be a project manager in your current position, as well as in another region, in another industry, that you have that strong foundation and experience in project management, that as the world changes, you can change with it because you understand the core of project management. I think that's what we aim for. And I do think we do a fairly good job of that. So if you are in project management, I think that's why you should get your PMP. Of course, other people think that too, and that's why they ask for it for jobs, for promotions. That's why you can get more money if you have the credential. But it only matters if the credential actually means something, right?
I like it. I like it too. I think you've done a great job explaining. You kind of demystified a lot of stuff with like the approach, the rigor, the thing I see is like, it seems like a ginormous network of everybody kind of like hands in, trying to create an experience that will help other project managers hone their craft, which is heartening, I think, for me. Like, it's like, okay, like there's all these people that are thinking about the best ways to do things, and they're helping create an environment where younger, developing project managers can work themselves up and say, okay, I'm here. Now I'm part of the community. Now I can give back. So that's cool. Well, Alejandra, I appreciate it. Is there anything at the end that you'd like to leave people with, an ending thought or message or anything before we head on into that good night? Anything that you would like to leave us with, ma'am?
I'd like to remind everyone out there that PMI, it's a nonprofit organization. It was built by volunteers. It's still a volunteer organization. I encourage those that have gone through it, studied, practiced, become great project managers and gotten their PMP or any other, ACP, RMP, etc.
There you go. Send them out. Yeah.
Reach out to us. We're always looking for more people to build this. This isn't that one person in the back, as you asked, right? It's a community. And I think that keeping our credentials strong is a community effort. And we love it when we have new people come and reach out to us with ideas or support. So we really are open to it. We go through VRMS, our volunteer system. But there's opportunities out there. We love it when we hear from our community, and especially when we can give back together.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. I hope this isn't the last time we ever chat. And if there's literally anything you can ever need from me, just sign me up. I'm there. So I'll do it. Awesome. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.